Welcome to the Chase Challenge, week 25. Last week, we saw the United Kingdom of Israel divide into two kingdoms. The northern kingdom, called the Kingdom of Israel, and the southern kingdom, called the Kingdom of Judah. Solomon's son, Rehoboam, became king of the southern kingdom of Judah, and his servant, Jeroboam, became king of the northern kingdom of Israel. Do you remember last week when Jeroboam set up this religious system centered around the worship of two calves, two man-made idols that Jeroboam introduced to his people as the gods who brought them out of Egypt? He ascribed to two man-made idols power, might, and authority that only the God Yahweh possessed, because Yahweh is the one that parted the Red Sea for Moses. Yahweh is the one that parted the Jordan River for Joshua before they came into the Promised Land. Yahweh was the only God who was powerful enough to truly deliver them from Egypt or from anyone or anything. But Jeroboam told his people that the two calves were the God who brought them out of Egypt. Now, when the two kingdoms divided, a lot of the God-fearing Israelites defected from the northern kingdom of Israel to the southern kingdom of Judah. The southern kingdom of Judah wasn't following the Lord either. Even though they had the temple in Jerusalem that Solomon had built, they had also embraced a lot of worship of other gods of the surrounding nations. Going back to the northern kingdom of Israel, after Jeroboam, there were four kings who had fairly short-lived reigns. Omri's dynasty was especially evil. Omri established the city of Samaria as the capital city of the northern kingdom of Israel. His son, Ahab, built a temple for Baal in Samaria. Ahab married Jezebel, who was one of the most wicked women of the Bible. And her influence in the kingdom of Israel was vast and extremely evil. Not only was a temple built for Baal in the capital city of Samaria, but Asherah poles were also put up. And you will see throughout the next several weeks that there are high places that are often mentioned. Under every green tree, there was some idol, some altar, some place of worship for these other gods. Jezebel was not only influential in establishing the worship of Baal and Asherah in the northern kingdom of Israel, but she was also very instrumental in getting rid of every aspect of God and his voice through the prophets throughout the whole kingdom of Israel. She was responsible for the murder of every prophet of God that she could get her hands on, and only a few survived. Elijah was one of those prophets. Even though Israel had completely abandoned God and embraced all of these other gods from the surrounding nations, God had not abandoned them. And that's why he kept Elijah, his voice and his prophet, in this place to continue to speak his words so that they might know that he is Yahweh, he is God, and he is the God who hears, he's the God who sees, and he's the God who is able to rescue. God wasn't finished with Israel, even though Israel might think they were finished with God. God gave Elijah some unique opportunities to display the power of God to the kings of Israel and the people of Israel. What kinds of things did God do through Elijah? How did the kings respond? How did the people of Israel respond? God was chasing after them. Did they choose to chase after him? At one point, Elijah specifically confronted the prophets of Baal. He invited Ahab, the king of Israel, and the people of Israel to all observe as they had a face-off. In front of all of these people, Elijah prays to Yahweh. What does he say in his prayer? How does he identify God? And how does Elijah identify himself in relation to God? What does he ask God to do? And then I want you to look at the "so that" statement that Elijah makes in his prayer. Elijah asks God to do something. And then Elijah says, "so that blank." What is the "so that"? So many times in our prayers, our requests to God, if we add that little "so that" addendum to the prayer, it reveals the motive behind our request. It reveals the why. So that. Why did Elijah want God to answer his prayer? Did God answer Elijah's prayer? How does the king of Israel respond to Elijah's prayer, and how do the Israelites respond? Not long after this face-off between the prophets of Baal and Yahweh, Elijah has another request for God, but this time he asks God to take his life. Does God hear this prayer, and does God answer Elijah's prayer? And look at this specific prayer. Does Elijah add a "so that" addendum to his prayer request? Although Elijah was not killed in Jezebel's murderous escapade to kill all the prophets that she could who lived in the northern kingdom of Israel, many of the prophets were killed. You will encounter many of the widows and children of these murdered prophets in this week's reading. They are often referred to as the sons of the prophets. How does God protect and provide for the widows and orphans of these prophets who were murdered? While the northern kingdom of Israel was completely abandoning God, setting up temples for Baal and Asherah poles, the southern kingdom of Judah was experiencing a bit of revival. After Solomon's son Rehoboam ruled, his son Abijah, also known as Abijam, becomes king, and his son, named Asa, begins to push back against the idol worship that had crept into the southern kingdom of Judah. He begins destroying the prostitution and idol worship that had become prevalent in Judah. Since the days of Rehoboam and Jeroboam, there was constant conflict between the northern kingdom of Israel and the southern kingdom of Judah. But Asa's son, Jehoshaphat, who also pushed back against the idol worship and the evil that was in Judah during this time, Jehoshaphat began to make alliances with Israel. Look very closely at Jehoshaphat's alliances. While the northern kingdom of Israel is abandoning God and they're experiencing famine, they're experiencing rebellion, they're experiencing threats from surrounding nations, especially the nation of Aram, Jehoshaphat is experiencing relative peace and prosperity. Jehoshaphat is making intentional efforts to teach the word of God to the people of Judah. But these alliances that Jehoshaphat makes with the nation of Israel through the kings Ahab and his sons Ahaziah and Joram, Jehoshaphat's family is influenced. How does Jehoshaphat's alliance with Israel affect his personal family and the nation of Judah for years to come? One of the prophets named Jehu confronts Jehoshaphat. What specifically does Jehu say to Jehoshaphat about his alliance with Ahab and the nation of Israel? As you look at the lives of King Ahab of Israel, King Jehoshaphat of Judah, and the prophets who speak to them, Elijah, Elisha, look at their lives and ask yourself, do these men have undivided hearts? Are their hearts fully devoted to the Lord? Remember the criteria we talked about last week? Do they personally identify with God? Do they see the purpose for their lives as being one that is lived for God? Do they pursue the Lord and His Word? Do they show their need for God by praying to Him, by seeking Him, recognizing in humility that they need Him and that He's the one that can meet their needs? He's able. And what about pushback? Do they push back against the sin in their own lives and the sin surrounding them? Do they make intentional efforts to push back against the things that God says to push back against? And finally, did God hear their prayers? Did God answer their prayers? Were they chasing after God? Because God was chasing after each one of them. And He's chasing after you. Check out my new video, The Chase Challenge Week 25 People, for more information on how the nation of Judah and the nation of Israel interacted during this week and next week's reading. I'll see you next week.